Hello and welcome to the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast. It is October 17th, 2024. This is episode 295. Stand-up comedian, actor, and improviser. But more importantly than all that, the dreamer. Paul Green coming to you, sharing my journey and thoughts on pursuing a dream in comedy, in acting, and just hoping that maybe something I've really learned along the way will provide some inspiration or some context, or maybe a cautionary tale to anybody else out there pursuing their own dreams, whatever that may be, big or small, it is all the same. So, I am in the middle of a run of shows. Tonight, I had the opportunity to do my bread and butter, my OG comedy wheelhouse, which is short form improv. And if you don't know me very well, or this is your first time joining me, I started doing short form improv in 2008, and I started taking classes at a local improv club out here in Arizona and just fell in love with it instantly and just absolutely love improvisational comedy, similar to like Whose Line Is It Anyway? And I have been involved in improv performance to some degree or another for, ever since then, since 2008. So what's that, like 16 years? 16 years. Don't they go by in a blink? There was a little quote from a movie there, adjusted slightly. So anyway, tonight I had a very unique opportunity. The owner of JP's Comedy Club told me that I could produce my own improv comedy show. And so I had the opportunity to hand select some improvisers of who I've worked with in the past, who I knew I would just have a blast performing with. And then I got to put the show together, put the lineup together, and it was so much fun. I had such a blast going back to my roots, which is improv. So what had happened was, in 2008, like I said, I started doing improv. It comes very naturally to me. I take classes, a couple rounds of classes, and then I get asked to join the main performing group of this improv troupe where I started. And as soon as I joined that troupe, I was pretty much knee-deep, synonymous with short-form improv locally here in the Phoenix, East Valley, Phoenix, Arizona area. And I was performing all of the time, both in the theater and then also all kinds of corporate shows and corporate team builders. I mean, it was just all over the place. So, anyway, at that time in my life, seriously, my biggest dream was if I could just do these shows full time and do nothing else with my life, that would make me very happy. And as is so often the case in life, that is not what ended up happening. Around 2014, I had some things happen where I decided, I might need to take a break for a while from performing with this improv theater, and just needed to step away. And next thing I know, for the first time in that was 2014. So I started in 2008. So like straight years, I was performing improv comedy with this troupe pretty much exclusively, and a lot. I was doing at least 2 shows a week, sometimes a lot more. There would be some times where I would do like all 4 of their shows in their theater. They did 2 shows on Friday and 2 shows on Saturday. So it'd be like 2 shows Friday, 2 shows Saturday. I would do like, 2 or 3 corporate shows. Then, there was a rehearsal, and then I was teaching some of their classes as well and doing their understudy programs. I mean, there would be times where I would be involved like every night with that theater. So when I took a break, I had this huge just hole open up in my life, in my schedule. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, wow, it's Tuesday night, and this is usually when rehearsal is, and I don't have to go to rehearsal tonight. What am I going to do with my life? So shortly after I took that break, something very random happened, and I got this email. I'm going to actually tell the story why I got that email, because it's all very synchronistic, right? This is one of those synchronistic things where like just very seemingly random events all sort of line up, right? So about 3 or 4 months before I had taken a break from that improv troupe, I was going to church one day, and this woman walks into my congregation, a single young woman who I always had a huge crush on. And I had taken her on a date several years before, but then she went up to college, and I think she went to Northern Arizona University. So I had taken her on this date. She wasn't interested. That was pretty obvious. So I was like, yeah, whatever. But I always had a huge crush on her. So she goes away to college. Okay. So now it's like December. This would be like December 2013, somewhere around there. She comes back from college. I don't remember if it was just for like winter break or if she had already graduated. She might have already graduated because she was super smart. I think that is what happened. I think she graduated after like 3 years. Just a really, really smart, talented woman, and who I just had this huge crush on. So anyway, so now she's back. She walks into church, and I see her. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's back. I still had a crush on her. And even though she wasn't interested before, I'm like, hey, maybe now that she's educated, maybe she's now wise enough to choose me as a viable dating partner. So anyway, she's back in town. I go up, I talk to her, and I'm like, hey, let's go out, right? So now I have a date with her. And so one night, I'm trying to just find something fun. Like, I really want to put together a cool date for her. She was very special to me, even though, didn't really care about me, but that's cool. Not her fault. Not anybody's fault. And so while I'm Googling, I find like this webpage that's like things to do in Arizona, and I'm scrolling through, and everything just looks horrible. None of this looks good. None of this looks fun. And finally, I'm scrolling through this, and this flyer shows up for a stand-up comedy show at the Tempe Center for the Arts. And the woman headlining is a woman named Amy Blackwell. Now, that time, I was hardcore LDS, very religious, and she was and might still be also very, very religious. And the thing you need to know about very religious LDS members is they are very uncomfortable with stand-up comedy in general because it's often not very wholesome. So what LDS people love is clean comedy. And I knew this. So I was like, if I'm going to take her out, I need to make sure that I take her out to something that's wholesome, because she was a very devout in her religious faith as well. So this flyer pops up for a stand-up comedy show, Amy Blackwell, and it says on the flyer, clean comedy show. And I'm like, sweet. A clean stand-up comedy show. I watched a couple clips of Amy. She was really funny. And I'm like, sweet. That is going to be my date with this woman who I have a huge crush on, which is also unrequited. So anyway, so we go to the comedy show at Tempe Center for the Arts. And while we're waiting for the show, there's a little slip on paper on the table, which is where you can write your email address to get added to like some random mailing list. And I'm just going, oh, okay, whatever, I'll put my email down. No big deal. So I put my email down. She and I, my date, we watched the show. We have a great show. Amy kills it. Amy and I actually became friends later after this. So we go on the date. Date ends. There's no sparks. She's still not interested in me romantically. Bummer. I was kind of bummed out. I may have tried to ask her out again, and I don't remember. Anyway, so that's like December 2013. So now, fast forward a few months. So we're like maybe March or so, February, March of 2014. I have now left, or I'm taking a break from the improv troupe, which was my whole world at the time. And there's this hole in my schedule now where I'm sort of a performing free agent. I don't really have any sort of performance outlet, again, because I've been doing that improv troupe like hardcore for 6 years, going all in. So one night I get this email from the Tempe Center for the Arts because I'd written my email down when I was on a date with that woman. And the email is for a free audit of a stand-up comedy class taught by the one and only Tony Disick. I didn't know who Tony was. I also was terrified of doing stand-up. I had never done stand-up comedy before. I found stand-up mortifying. I was terrified of it. That may not be true. I feel like maybe I did do a stand-up comedy open mic maybe once. I think I did another kind of random stand-up show, like as part of like a church activity. But I was very much like, no, I don't want to be a stand-up comedian. I just want to do improv. And there was something so terrifying about stand-up. And by the way, this hasn't really gone away. I mean, I've learned to cope with the fear better because I've now been doing it so long. But to me, so stand-up and improv, although it may seem like they're very similar, they're actually very different art forms. Yes, they're both under the umbrella of live comedy performance on a stage, but again, very different, right? And one of the main differences, I think, is, first of all, I said main difference, first of all. One of the main differences is, first of all, with improv, there's a very different relationship between the improvisers and the audience. And that relationship is the audience, when they are watching an improv show, they are aware that everything that the improvisers say is 100% made up on the spot, off the cuff. And because they're aware of that, I feel that improv audiences, or I find, have a much more forgiving threshold in terms of their expectations of what's going to be funny. And I contrast that with the stand-up comedy audience. A stand-up comedy audience, they have an expectation that everything that comedian is about to say is the funniest thing they've ever heard, because the comedian has had unlimited amounts of time leading up to this performance to prepare something that is supposed to be funny. So improv and stand-up, again, very different audience expectations. So to me, it's so much easier to perform for an improv audience because when they know you're making it up, anything that you say that has any sort of comedic sensibility whatsoever just blows their mind. Even if the comedy itself is not very sophisticated or not very well thought out. It's like, well, how could it be sophisticated and well thought out? You're making it up. It's right off the top of your head, right off the cuff. And the audiences at the improv show are really just blown away that we're able to do it at all, right? And again, with the stand-up comedy audience, you say a joke, if they don't think it's funny, they're like, why would you say something that's not funny? You're a comedian. You are supposed to only say things that are funny, and there maybe isn't as much of an appreciation for how effing hard it is to be funny as a stand-up comedian. So it's hard to be funny as an improviser as well. But again, the audiences, I feel, have a very different energy and expectation when they show up to a stand-up comedy show versus an improv show. And then the second main difference, which is pretty obvious, with an improv show, you have a cast and you are working together to create the comedy. You always have somebody to play off of. You always have you have the straight man, or, you have the relationship, or, there's somebody else there to, if you say something that's not funny, you got somebody else there to catch you in a net. And, or you got teammates to help support you and make everything that you say so funny and so important and so significant. As a stand-up comedian, you got nobody. You live and die by the jokes you spit into that microphone. If you go up there and you say a joke that ain't funny, there ain't nobody coming to save your ass. There ain't nobody coming off stage to take that not funny thing that you just said and use their creativity to actually make it very important and the funniest thing going on stage. So obviously that is a very significant difference between a stand-up show and an improv show, just in terms of having a cast versus it just being you. And again, it's a stand-up. You gotta be funny, which obviously comes to the main difference, or another main difference, which is, as a stand-up comedian, you also have to be the writer, and everything that you say has to be written and thought out and planned. Where again, as a improv, you don't plan anything. Everything is off the cuff. Everything is created spontaneously. So there's not as much prep time going into it, which brings me to another significant difference. As a stand-up, you have to be so much more authentic and vulnerable with who you really are. Now, there are some stand-ups who will assume a character or a caricature of themselves, so maybe they're a little bit more removed from who they really are. But I mean, it is incredibly vulnerable as a stand-up, because you're really going up to a microphone and saying, this is what I really think and feel, and these are my opinions, these are my experiences, and you're hoping that the audience is going to take your side and take your point of view, or at least, or which is also going to happen. If they don't agree with you or they don't take your point of view, they can still appreciate and resonate with your point of view and are still able to laugh with what you're talking about. It's like right now I'm doing a lot of material about being single, and it's almost like 95% of the audiences that I'm performing for are all married. And so I have to go and be like, yeah, it's what it's like being a single guy. And I have to relate to rooms full of married people who have been, married for many, many years. I did a show down in Yuma a couple weeks ago, and everybody was retirement age. There wasn't anybody probably under 50 in the audience. I mean that like literally nobody under the age of 50, maybe mid to late 40s, but probably not even that. I bet you the median age was like 60. And so then I have to go up there, but my jokes right now are about Bumble and online dating. And that's what stand-up is. Stand-up is prepared material. So, I mean, hopefully you have so much prepared material that you can kind of pivot, which, that's not really the case with where I'm at right now. I mean, I've got, a lot of years of stand-up. But anyway, stand-up and improv, very different. So now it's 2014. I get an email saying, do you want to audit a stand-up comedy class? And again, at that point in my life, stand-up terrified me. I would have people approach me saying, hey, you should do stand-up. Hey, you're funny. And I'm going, no. Stand-up is a whole other beast than improv. I'm like, I just want to do improv. Improv, I feel safe. I know I can crush it. Stand-up, daunting to me. But now I'm at this period of my life where I have a void in my comedy performance schedule. And so I just think to myself, well, it's just a free class. It's just an audit. It's one night. I'm going to show up. I'm going to prove to myself I don't want to do this. What's the worst that could happen? I end up changing my entire life and then end up being a stand-up comedian for the next 10 years, end up giving away everything I own and moving to L.A. and trying to make it as an L.A. comic, and then end up moving back home and still struggling every day to try to be a good stand-up comic. Hey, there's no way that could happen just by taking that one free audit class. So I take the one free audit class. It's Tony Visick. Tony Visick pulls me aside after the class. He's like, hey, I really think you should take my class. Well, he says that to everybody. He's just trying to get students because, we'll pay tuition. But okay, I'll bite. I'll just take the intro class. It's 6 weeks. They didn't even have a showcase. He didn't even have a showcase, so there was no performance involved. It was just showing up and just learning stand-up, learning how to write jokes, learning how to hold the mic and all that stuff. So then I take the intro class for 6 weeks. He talks to me at the end of it and just like, I think that you should pursue this. Once you take my advanced class, and he's like, yeah, okay, whatever. So then I take the advanced class, and then at the end of the advanced class, we do have a showcase. And so we do that showcase. I do my 5 minutes of stand-up comedy that we had been working on throughout the course of the class. And after that 5-minute showcase, Tony sits me down afterwards and goes, what the F are you doing in Arizona? Why aren't you in New York? Why aren't you in New York? Why aren't you in LA? Why aren't you really pursuing this? And that set me on a journey. About a year after that conversation, maybe a little more, maybe a year and a half, more like a year and a half after that conversation. Next thing I know, I was moving to LA, and then went to LA and had all of my LA experiences all over the place, and until I moved back home in 2022. And since 2022, I had rejoined the improv troupe that started it all. But here I am again, where I am not performing with them, and I have this void. And I'm very, very grateful that JP's Comedy Club approached me and just said, hey, why don't you try putting on an improv comedy show? And that's what I got to do tonight. And, this podcast is supposed to be about going for your dreams. I know a lot of tonight's episode was just me telling a long, boring story. But to me, it is really an indication of whatever it is that you really are, whatever it is that you really want, whatever it is that you're really passionate about. If you seek it and you want it, it will find you. And I was just reminded of that tonight, getting to perform improv. I brought a group of improvisers together, and there were 6 of us, and the 6 of us had never all performed together in one troupe. I had performed with everybody in the troupe, separately in different venues and different contexts. And I just knew that, like, man, if I bring this group of people together, we're gonna have so much fun. And we did. It was just such a blast. Everybody did such a great job. Everybody worked so well together. And we got to do an improv show. And then after doing a 90-minute improv show, the owner immediately had me come back up and do 15 minutes of stand-up. Which was actually cool. It was a lot, because this, audience had just seen me do improv, and I'd been, high energy coming at them at improv for 90 minutes. I was like, and now you're going to listen to him do stand-up for 15 minutes. The good news is I tried out a couple new jokes. One of them didn't really work. 2 of them didn't really work. But one of them kind of did. So I think I tried 3 new bits. And so 1 out of 3, that's pretty good, because the standard rate is about 10%. That about 10% of the jokes a comedian in general writes will actually end up being funny enough to bring on stage. So I was able to sort of sandwich those new jokes in between material that I've been doing that's been working. And, so started out with that, and then just tried a few of those new jokes, kind of got a feel for them, and then closed up with something stronger. So all in all, a really, really fun night for me of stand-up comedy and improv comedy, pursuing my dreams, and getting to live my dreams, everybody. Very grateful for that. And I will be performing back at JP's the next 2 nights, doing just more stand-up. Stand-up with a little bit of crowd work and a little bit of music improv, though. That's right, my improvisation, and I'm never far away from it when I'm performing. All right, everybody. This ended up going a lot longer than I thought it would. I didn't know that I was going to share the story about how I got the email from Tempe Center for the Arts to do a free intro stand-up comedy class, which ended up sending me down a completely different path in life. But what really started that all was me just asking out the girl I had a crush on, just being like, hey, she didn't like me before, but she's back. I'm going to ask her out, see what happens. She wasn't interested, still isn't. But I went for it, and then that took her to the comedy show, put my email address down, got the email from the thing that landed me in the class, and then that class really changed the course of my life. So anyway, everybody, keep going for your dreams, whatever it is you are pursuing, and great things will happen. Synchronicities will happen. Seemingly disconnected events will somehow all work together in your favor to bring really awesome things to pass. At least that's been my experience. So I am going to end it there, because it's getting a little long, and I am exhausted, and I got a long weekend. So I love you all so much. Thank you for listening to the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast for October 17, 2024, episode 295. I think I'm on about a 6-day daily streak. The other thing I'm doing at the same time is I want to get to 365 episodes without missing a day. All right, everybody. I love you all so much. I will talk to you tomorrow.